Well, I'm speaking to Scott Stevens and Nick Batterham from the Earthmen. Gee, it's good to have you guys here.
It's good to see you too, Josh.
Thanks for having us.
Now, the reason for this is because College Heart is out now on Popboomerang Records, and there's a reunion show at Bella Union. Is that the Trades Hall building?
Yeah, that's the old Trades Hall. It's kind of weird. I didn't realise Bella Union was actually the Trades Hall room. And I go, it's that room, yeah.
That's a great space. That'll be fun to play in.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There's a big picture of Gough as you walk up the stairs. And,
Better than playing under the Queen.
Yes, I don't know whether that bookshop is the bookshop still there.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, sort of, co-op socialist bookshop, whatever. Yeah. So yeah,
and it's on the 12th of November. Supports from Zebras and Autohaze.
Yeah, Zebras are one of my favourite Australian bands. Are just fantastic, and playing with Autohaze is going to be pretty funny. Considering when would we have been the last time we played with them, Nick? Like 95.
Something like that. Yeah. I saw them, they did a show with the Underground Lovers and the Glory Box at the Tote, which was a bit of a blast from the past. I think they'd asked us if we wanted to be on that bill, and it was sort of too soon because this release wasn't ready, but that was a great gig.
So I want to start by asking you a big picture question, and then I'll get down to the nitty-gritty. What do you guys think is the Earthmen's biggest contribution to the Australian music scene? I guess I'm wanting to know what you think the band brought that was unique or a bit different from what was going around at the time. Any thoughts?
I mean, I will say you did preface that you were going to ask us this question 2 minutes ago.
Gave you a lot of preparation time, didn't it?
Yeah, and I've never really thought about the stuff we did in that kind of context in terms of what it represent, other than what it represented to us as people.
So what did it represent to you?
Well, everything at the time, because when you do music and you're so invested, and you become, a bit of a brat, and you're in your head. And I think probably at the time is probably more a relevant one, because I guess at the time there wasn't a lot of sort of, pop music that wasn't sort of, and the band was started, I guess in an oppositional way to the sort of Melbourne scene of, heavy rock and sort of power chords and that sort of heroin chic kind of stuff. And to be a bit more sensitive and sort of think about things. I don't know if we came across that as people. But it felt like there was a couple of bands like, your old band, Sugargliders and Autohaze and Jupiter and a few other bands and, Blindside, Nick's other band, trying to do some things that were, and I guess what's interesting to think about it contextually now, that sort of shoegaze era and that C86 era were quite specific in terms of the sounds they were coming out with that were quite different. It was, it's sort of weird thinking about shoegaze as a particular sound that's had never been before. And so I guess it was investing in some of those sounds and, being young and sort of expressing yourself.
Now, I might challenge you on some of that in a minute. So any thoughts, Nick, about what the Earthmen brought to the scene that was unique?
Well, like Scott, it's very hard to say, think of it in that way, like some legacy or what's left behind. But at the time, I guess over the period of the Earthmen's life, it went through 2 or 3 phases or transitions, depending on how you look at it. And in the earliest, most loud and noisy teenage kind of way, there was a lot of celebrating what all the influences were and talking about a group of individuals who are all into indie music and inspired by it and wanting to do that. And I think that if there's a point of difference, it's not like the only band to be melodic in the 90s, because it's probably a pretty melodic decade. But I think we were noticeably melodic, that was more important than anything, regardless of the style of the sound, whether it was the noisier period or the more polished period. That's sort of it still is kind of how we write as individuals as now down the track,
It's interesting that you both identify melody as being important, because in those early Earthmen releases and some of those early gigs, you're a pretty noisy bunch of boys, and it was. But you're right. It was the era of grunge, and there was some pretty nihilistic stuff around, and you guys were perhaps reacting a bit to that, but still bloody noisy. Did you find yourselves identifying more with, Mudhoney or the Sugargliders?
No, I mean more the Sugargliders than Mudhoney. I mean, I like some Mudhoney stuff, but because there were real epoch records that affected me. Like My Bloody Valentine's Isn't Anything or Mary Chain stuff, which had that noise element, but was also relatively sensitive and also had some beauty to it. And when you're younger, you roll up to a lot of shows and you'll go to anything, and you'd end up at all these hard rock shows that weren't really representing kind of the sounds you wanted to hear, the sounds of the records you were really excited that you were buying and that you'd be chatting about with your friends. And also, I think it's kind of funny to think about how inexperienced you are when you're young. You're just kind of freewheeling it, and I don't come from a musical trained background, and so it was sort of there's a lot of sort of inspiration stuff going on.
I was going to ask you to take me back to the start of the band. I might be wrong about this, but weren't you guys from the Mornington Peninsula? I'm imagining a sort of an Aussie crawl type beginning where you're all surfers and... No, it wasn't like that?
No, it wasn't like that.
And didn't you win a Triple J competition?
Yeah, I mean, Nick and I are a couple of years apart in age, and so it's that funny thing where we were that apart in age that we knew each other a little bit because I used to work at a record store down Frankston Way. But it's that difference in age that it wasn't until the music started coming together that, you're sort of friends because you'd left school by then. Because, Nick was in Blindside with Hamish.
I think it's funny from that period, I guess, through band life. I would have had a relationship with Scott and had similar with Hamish over time of being in band and then friendship outside of band. How much you, I would say, influence each other, but I could say in both cases of Scott and with Hamish, how much my musical taste has been shaped by either what they're making me listen to or giving to me to listen to, or I'm having to hear through being exposed to their company, through living together or being in a van or whatever. And so for me, that kind of forever growing musical depth of all these different things. I mean, Aaron from the Earthmen gave me Neil Young Zoomer for I think my 20th or 21st birthday, saying I need to hear this, you need to hear this thing. And
he was a Neil Young pusher.
And that's until then, Neil Young, whatever, it sort of wasn't, stylistically something that I could appreciate. And that's a hugely developmental thing, as an approach to guitar playing and songwriting. He then became enormously influential. And I could say the same thing about any number of acts that were sort of fed into me through the thing of being in a band with equally charged musical people with a large appetite for new things.
And I guess it's always important to remember how, years ago, living in an outer suburb felt like you're on an island. And I don't know if Nick's always felt this way, but I felt like, growing up down Frankston Way, the first thing I did when I left high school was leave, because you wanted to be invested in different things than the sort of a bit of the thuggery that was going on down that way. I'm much more rose-coloured about that area now than I was back then. But I think that really affects your oppositional idea anyway. A bit like coming from a country town. It's a bit like when you'd be at uni and you'd meet people from country towns. They were usually quite developed in terms of their personal interests, and because they'd really had to fight for it. And I think maybe an outer suburb way is a bit like that as well, because you come into the city with inner city friends, and it felt it was easier for them. Probably wasn't, but it felt like that way.
Stepping ahead, I may change
how did you end up on Summershine Records?
Well, the Earthmen had won a Triple J recording session, and I used to, like you did, Josh, go to Exposure Records a lot, like a lot. Like as Jason Reynolds, who ran Summershine, had his radio show, and you'd listen to a song, you'd get the train up a couple of hours to go get some record he just played, or you'd call him midway through playing after he'd played a song, kind of thing. And I mentioned to him that we'd started a band, which wasn't really a band at that point. It was just, a bunch of, fools. And we'd made the recording, and I said, "Oh, do you want to hear the recording?" And he did, and then he put it out. So it was kind of, I couldn't believe it. It was pretty exciting.
And that was Stacey's cupboard, hey?
Yeah. That's pretty much how I remember it, that it was kind of like, I couldn't actually believe that it was, my favourite label was putting out the record. Because that label was pretty influential for me. And Jason's musical taste is still actually pretty amazing. He had everything that was in fanzines. It was like, you have things that aren't even written about. He had all these amazing connections. Like, I don't even know how he was arranging to get, you remember how hard it was to find a record in those days. It was like, you'd see one copy and that might be it. You might never see it again. You might read one line in a paper about it, or he'd have fanzines about things that you'd never seen, or contacts with labels. It was like he was writing to everybody. It was quite amazing.
I feel like we were quite lucky in Melbourne to have a shop like that, because there wasn't anything else that would have filled the gap if he hadn't been there.
Like that. I mean, if you're old like we are, and you remember like trying some of those record stores to find certain records, you just never found them. You go to Missing Link and you might find a Smith 7-inch. Go was great, but it was completely different sort of stock. And I mean, we all went to the Gaslights and stuff, but Exposure was amazing.
Further to that, not just the record store, we're all, the three of us are all very fortunate to have sort of had a musical beginning in a way through that label. So not that we've, played at Sandown Raceway or the Tennis Centre or anything, but what little we have, we do owe to that foundation.
Yeah. So you guys released some really good records on Summershine, and quite a few tracks appear on this compilation. I'm interested to know which songs on College Heart you guys are the most proud of. Which ones do you think stand up the best? Have you thought about that?
We spent ages, weirdly enough, like working out what to put on a compilation, because up until the point Scotty brought it up at your Sugargliders reunion show, I'd never even thought about it, and it was quite weird going through it all, and things were appearing out of the woodwork that you didn't remember you'd recorded, and demos. We demoed more songs than we'd ever released, kind of thing, like Country Mile. So I don't know. I mean, I'm really happy with all the phases. The Fallen Rose EP for me somehow captures a really fun period, but yet there's, I don't know, then I'll say, but yet the Love Walked In stuff I feel the same way about, because it was like a chrysalis of all that sort of stuff that had happened before it. And Nick and I had worked so hard to kind of sort of fine tune those songs. I don't know if Nick should answer that one, because I don't have a specific song.
Yeah, I don't have a favourite. I guess I sort of hate it all quite equally.
Oh, come on. I mean, I've got my favourites. I think from the Summershine era, I think Figure Eight stands up particularly well. It's just, it still sounds so, the guitar sounds are so raw and real, and all the elements work together so well. There's a tightness and a looseness that's there that I really love in that song.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously attached to songs where I play a lead break.
I think you get two in Figure Eight.
Yeah, I quite like that song for that reason. song first single I just really liked. When it's sort of, it was really good for us live in that last incarnation of the band. And in us rehearsing to do this, launch of this thing, it's just a really good chug and rock song, based around a riff, and that's just fun to play. So I don't sort of get sick of listening to those lead breaks.
I probably have a really soft spot for Tell the Woman Where We're Going. I mean, I've always been obsessed by back loops. And I'm pretty sure that Nick had given me a cassette and I was demoing some stuff, and it was one of those old 4-track cassettes where stuff just loops. Mm-hmm. You have the loop is on, just plays through as you're playing it.
If you put it on a normal cassette deck, then 2 of the tracks will be playing back.
So I think that's how I heard it. Went, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And then just arranging, getting the quartet into play, that sort of Balaniscu quartet sort of influence kind of outro that was, when you have a string quartet come in and play in the studio, it makes you feel amazing. It just sounds amazing. I mean, that
would have been the first recording with strings?
Yes. Yeah. And it still makes me happy to think that happened. Nick, I think it was you and your brother that scored it, and it has a real resonance for me.
So I'm jumping around a fair bit chronologically, but in between the Summershine stuff and the Warner stuff, you had that period on Seed, the Atlantic offshoot. What came first, signing to Seed or going to the USA?
Signing to Seed.
And you were playing those songs when you were over in the US, is that right?
We were playing the Fall and Rise stuff. So the Seed stuff, which I think Jason helped sort of propagate.
Yeah.
Good choice of word for Seed.
Indeed. That was concurrent with the Summershine era. Jason had contacts over there, and Seed was that an Atlantic offshoot that had sort of stuff out by the Pastels and Madder Rose and quite a few. Ivy, which is amazing. They did a television personalities comp, which is pretty amazing. A really good comp, actually. So that came about, and that, if you can call it a deal, there wasn't really money involved. That sort of was at the point when Teen Sensations was out, and then we went over there by the time of the Fall and Rise EP. We were over there playing the Fall and Rise era stuff, so we weren't even playing that older stuff by that point.
So what happened in America, guys?
Oh, we didn't make it.
But you played some blistering shows by the sounds of it, and it was, according to the liner notes, I really love the liner notes in this compilation. It sounds like it was a tumultuous time for the band.
Tumultuous, blistering shows. So very drunken shows. There was
it felt mostly like an experience.
Major self-sabotage in just the boyish excitement and peaking too soon, shall we say, pretty continually.
But it was also a weird tour because it meant so much to do it, and yet there weren't very many shows. Like, shows dropped out. We didn't have anyone sort of arranging much, and things would drop out and this and that. So it was sort of weird in that way where, I've gone over there subsequently with different other musical bands and played much more than the Earthmen played in that tour, because we went away for, 6 weeks? 2 months?
Yeah, something like that. There's probably only a dozen shows or less.
Yeah, and the UK, so US and the UK, both coasts. So you would expect that if that's a proper band touring, they're doing 30 shows. I think we did like 5 or something.
So did that mean you had a lot of spare time and a lot of time to get up to stuff that wasn't really band related?
Buying a lot of comics. There was a lot of really good comics to buy in San Francisco.
Yeah, there was a lot of downtime, a lot of time with not having any money, not being able to do very much, and just kind of seething in each other's company.
But I only really have fond memories. I would just recall all these amazing things that you saw and you were seeing for the first time. I'd never travelled, and so you're seeing all these amazing things.
You said it best to start with. It's like an experience, like a life experience. I'd never been overseas in my life, and what a way to go, travelling with a band and with your mates, it's with your mates. So in that way, I still kind of dine out on that in my mind, experiences from that time. It's amazing, what a fortunate thing to get to happen. I think I turned 21 while we were away.
And I had a birthday up there at the same time as weird.
What an age to be getting to do such a thing.
And there was also some pretty sort of we recorded with some of the kids from Ivy in their studio in the meatpacking area of New York, which then was still quite sort of risque and dangerous, but it was also really hot. So one of my overriding memories is New York and Boston is something about 45 degrees and just heat. And I remember the record company got us to go up to Boston a day earlier than they should have, and then that's where I guess there was a moment of friction between a couple of the band members. But I think it's because we were locked in this tiny hotel room in Boston in 45 degree heat with pretty much no money, and then we got to play in this really great venue, but they just gave it, we boozed up really early and, embarrassed ourselves, I think. But it was funny.
What effect do you think that tour had on the band subsequently? I mean, you came back and you started writing some of the most melodic songs of your career, and you signed to Warner Brothers. Did the tour have a positive effect in the long run, or was it damaging?
I don't know, positive or negative. As a just pure physical outcome of it, Aaron left the band. So it then really became just Scott and I as a songwriting duo. And so that's a huge shift right there, because the way that it was working was sort of a collaboration between 3 people and plus the band.
Yep.
And for that to go down to just being 2 people and kind of not plus the band, the immediate period after that really morphed around to the point of then when signing to Warner's, it was just Scott and I doing that.
And the signing to Warner thing was quite a way off too. Like, we'd recorded an entire record with Wayne Connolly at Neil Finn's amazing old house studio that used to be in Caulfield East, Caulfield West, one of those parts of Caulfield. Yeah. So there was a whole stack of writing going on. There wasn't a lot of major label stuff until the point when, ages. It was about almost a year plus, wasn't it?
Well, I wanted to ask about the Wayne Connolly sessions, because they Scene Stealer came out of that, didn't it?
Yes.
But were there other, like, you recorded a whole album of stuff. What was wrong with it?
Well, at the time, nothing. I don't think any of us were unhappy with it.
Why didn't you release it?
Because the record company becoming interested in us saw it as being good demos, and let's see what happens when we take these songs into the big studio, and spend the real money on it. To us, what we recorded with Wayne was probably as good or better than anything we had recorded to that point, and as hi-fi and as well thought about and well orchestrated. But yeah, being told or offered the opportunity to now go and do this, well, what would you do? Say, no, this is as good as it's going to get. So let's see what happens. So it seems to me a pretty organic process, and there was never any point where we sort of looked at what we had and thought it was crap. We just got another offer,
So that re-recording that happened in Sydney, didn't it? What was the name of the fella who did it? Daniel
Denham. Yeah, that was at 301 Studios, which sort of doesn't really exist anymore. That was one of the big, the big studios in Sydney. And 16 Lovers Lane by the Go-Betweens was recorded there, amongst all a bunch of other things that I don't know about. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience, just because purely it was the first. Well, I guess we'd been in some really nice studios here, but it was like you were in it because were in Sydney. You were really focused. And Daniel, as much as a lot of the stuff he did was fairly mainstream, he actually was really good to work with. He was really he really endeavoured to, I guess, get the best out of all of us. And I think he gave really good tips and really good sort of ideas in a way that sometimes people don't, like vocal ideas, or, he worked really well with Nick, and they, got on like a house on fire and did some really great sounds, and he was just happy to try things, wasn't he? Like, you felt like you could try anything.
We got on like a huge joint on fire, more likely. Yeah, I think part of that, yes, all credit to Daniel. I think part of that is that there was a time factor that there hadn't been before. It's still not like, endless time. And the studio was certainly more expensive than any studio time we'd had before, but it did seem sort of less like the indie thing of going into a room and overnight smashing out all you can and then mixing it the next day. It was considered, and that it was done in a couple of blocks, but the idea that the record was made over 6-9 months, it was very considered. Lots of sessions, lots of specific time to do specific things. I've got a photo in my studio that's sort of my pipe dream, wet dream amp setup, and that's from that recording, and it shows there's the Persian rug and shit, and there's these Marshalls and these couple of Voxes and this 1950s Fender and the Leslie cabinet and everything, with multiple mics on all of them, and just looking at it going, get out of here, I've got like 10 different things to choose from, and let's test all of them.
He had this Fender amp that was it reverbing? The whole thing was like going wah, 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 just shake, just sort of throbbing like a human. It was just like, it was really funny.
Well, there was some great songs came out of those sessions. Whoever's been using this bed still sounds so great. Hug Me Tighter, Coloured In, first single, which you've mentioned, and I'm particularly fond of Song to Sing as well. The video for Whoever's Been Using This Bed is a personal favourite of mine as well. You're all looking pretty terrific.
It was really funny when you get to do a video, because I've never done one before. Lots of people make them. We evidently never decided to do that. And so you're sort of putting your faith and trust in a lot of other people. You sort of have a couple of ideas. So I find that one funny to watch, but sort of halfway embarrassing. It's kind of like there's a few things you do and you go like, well, I wouldn't do that again. That's halfway between that. But yeah, it's pretty funny. It's also weird because there's lots of friends are in it, which was part of the fun of getting all these friends sort of in it. I like it.
Yeah, it's definitely funny. It's of its time. Like, it feels like a 90s video clip in the way it looks and everything. To me, I mean, we'd had no experience of doing anything like that, and to rock up to, it's filmed at the Nightcat on Johnson Street, and to rock up and there are these couple of big white film trucks, like a semi-trailer thing full of gear, going far out, and all these people hanging around it. Total new thing.
And it's kind of weird too, because aesthetically, I don't particularly like band in videos. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, if I have a chance to do videos, the band isn't in it. I don't necessarily have this desire to see my face. So it's sort of funny when there's so much of my face in that video. It's sort of
for lack of experience or better judgment, I said yes to the stylist straightening my hair. So, you've got beautiful long red hair. No, you never see that straight. It's always curly. Can I straighten your hair? So yeah, sure, why not?
It shows you how like big labels can get bands to do things because they've never done them before. So you're like, oh sure, we'll try that. It's like they did this terrible photo shoot with us a bit longer, but not that long after, because they said it'll look like surreal and hyper real, and there'll be these amazing backgrounds, and they had us in all these terrible like Mook's clothes, and it was the worst photo you've ever seen in your life. And it's kind of like, oh well, I won't do that again, but it's
it's the cover. It was for the cover of Beat magazine, and it was just Mook's thing. And like the colour of my jacket would look better if, what's the colour on the inside? It's like turn it inside out. It's not a reversible jacket. I'm on the cover of the street rag with a jacket on inside out, and we've got like silver makeup on our faces and shit to look like we're androids or something.
We had some kind of like stronger manifesto, like, no, we need to wear these pants and we're only going to wear these shirts, we were sort of like, oh sure, like, we'll give it a shot,
have to ask you about the legal action that delayed the release of this album by a whole year. What happened there? Can you tell me?
Probably won't go into much. I mean, it's just, I guess, conversations can happen. And I guess I feel like with that sort of stuff, you need to be relatively discreet and to respect all parties. Basically, I guess it's not come out as it was originally intended. And that's a bit of a shame.
So some songs that you'd originally thought would be on it aren't on it?
Yeah. So just, certain things can happen. And, with respect to everyone involved, kind of thing. I'm being, and I feel like you should be politic about these sort of things and keep them sort of, to be respectful. It just didn't happen as it was originally going to. But that said, I'm really happy with what it is. But yes, it would have been a year ago. It would have been a year younger, a year more beautiful.
Nick, are you happy with how College Hearts come out?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it the way we intended it, so there is a disappointment in that, but it still works and it's still a chronology. I mean, I could take or leave the idea of the Earthmen having a retrospective. It's not like I'm having sleepless nights wishing this thing happened, and now it's here. It's this beautiful thing that we have that is actually really sweet, and very lucky to have that. Especially given that the Earthmen was pre-internet, that sort of has actually brought it into something that did happen, which is really nice. But I'm more proud of the 4 newly recorded songs, and just the idea that the spirit of the whole compilation was for the fun or to revisit what was good about it. And in doing so, recording again with the last lineup of the band, recording these demos that never got to be recorded, was really, there's no commercial reason for us to do that. It's really for the enjoyment of doing this thing together. And so that remains, that triumphs over any negative shit. It was always gonna.
And what's the lineup of the band that's playing at this Bella Union gig?
So it's pretty much the last lineup, plus Aaron. Ben, one of our old drummers, he might be able to come down, which would be really great. Everyone that was in the
So you got Matt Sigley on bass,
Nick Murray on guitar, and Craig Mitchell on drums.
Yeah, so they're all in that last lineup of the band, and Matt, through some earlier periods as well, and Aaron,
as the early lead guitarist, or is he playing rhythm guitar mostly, or a bit of both?
It's pretty hard to separate when we're both playing over the top of each other, and
I look forward to that.
As his founding member, it's his baby in so many ways. And we're just feeling out a little bit of how the crossover works, rather than it just, sort of keeping it to being you play on things from the period of the band that you were in, rather than everyone learning everything. But there's some overlap, in particular with some of the live covers that we used to do and things. So there will be some things that have never been Earthmen before, like the 3-guitar onslaught.
Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it.
I don't know how you felt like, when you did the Sugargliders, you probably hadn't been playing those songs for a while.
No, we, despite what Scott from Popboomerang originally wanted, we said, no, we're going to play a Steinbecks gig and we'll do a few Gliders songs at the end. So that's what we did. But yeah, it did feel very strange playing those songs, which were very much young man's songs. Yeah. And they didn't feel all that appropriate for 2014.
So I wonder then, how did you find, because this is what we've been going through, which is a fascinating thing, that the mental memory, how your memory bank can retrieve something from 20, 25 years ago, and you remember whole things, some things you remember bits. So I wondered how that affected you, because I know it's been quirky for my brain. Kind of go, that's pretty funny. I didn't know I still knew any of that.
Well, I did have that experience. We had this Sugarglider song called Reinventing Penicillin, and it had these little guitar-y bits that I played in that, and they came almost straight back to me, which I was astonished at, because I had not played them for a very long time.
Yeah, I've found with the guitar lines of things that even to the point of making the same mistakes that I remember I used to make. Like there'll be a riff that just sort of finishes on a note that is not, intuitive, and I just remember that's right. I made that. Like, it's unbelievable how it's just burned in there. Granted, there's songs that we will have just played hundreds and hundreds of times, you know, that it's not like it's kicking around in your head humming when you're on the tram, but that's just there because it's inescapable.
But actually, I always find that fascinating because, you know, your mind's like some really large library and you don't even access most of the books, you know. It's just the hallways of the past. And it's a bit like, you know, when you talk about, you know, the old days or whatever it is, you know, each of us have different memories and different, you know, perceptions and impressions. It's always just fascinating getting together, you know, and getting together with you and stuff and kind of remembering those eras and the past experiences because they all blur into this funny kind of, soup.
Why did the Earthmen split up?
I think major label, it got kind of complicated, didn't it? And I mean, there was a couple of things, I guess, that I was probably like, Nick was wanting, I guess, to do more of his stuff. And I think I didn't know how to kind of coalesce that in terms of my involvement. And I think it started, being on the major label got to be a bit of a drain as well. Everything's sort of glacially slow. And you just have all this sort of time and life is going by while this time is sort of going by in this slow crawl. Because, you know, you think about how much we demoed some of that stuff. There probably could have been like 2 or 3 other records.
Yeah. And on indie labels, often they can turn things around really quickly. And, you know, you can, in those days, you used to be able to bang out a 7-inch really quickly.
And I think in a lot of ways, retrospectively, you know, there are decisions you would have done differently, like probably changing the idea of what label you wanted to be on. And I think also, like, Nick and I at the time were a bit like brothers. And so the way we interacted was kind of in the way sort of brothers do, which is not always sort of as verbally astute as you need to be, because we were so entwined in sort of, you know, with each other.
Yeah. I mean, maybe for not having a strong framework or plan, again, if we could expect ourselves to have had at that time, after so much tension we really were writing with the end result in mind, because of, you know, you're not going to get to make a record until you have the songs we think you can go into the studio with. It's a pretty unhealthy way of songwriting to my mind. And it's the only time in my life that I've sort of been forced to make anything other than what I want to make, except with, you know, commercial work where you get paid for it. This is not getting paid. And
it's something that you feel very personally attached to, so it's different.
Yeah, and wrapped up in that, I know for myself there was a fair bit of head in the clouds with the opportunities that were presenting to us as well, you know. And so perhaps Scott and I were pulling in different directions there, and the tone of the band had changed a lot over a few years. Like, it had gone to a very different thing to what it had started out as. So yeah, it's sort of, there was definitely a breaking point.
Yeah, I forgot about that meeting. There was a particular meeting we went to play some demos, and they would have been the demos that we re-recorded. And it was literally like that thing you imagine record companies are like, whether they start playing something, go, nah, next one, nah, next one. And it was like, what? You know, like, and a lot of those recordings were quite sort of sensitive songs. They were pretty sort of mellow in a lot of ways. They were sort of trying. We were, I guess, listening to a lot of 60s sort of stuff at that point, sort of the symphonic stuff, but sort of low key, getting into the sort of folk rock stuff.
Whereas on the same label, Regurgitator had just released Unit, and so the label were like playing you that this is a record, Polyester Girl, you know, like, okay.
And I think maybe subsequently that's a weird meeting to be in, that kind of experience. It's makes you uncomfortable, and I think you probably
They did seriously play us Unit. Like, they played it to us in our publisher's office, like, listen to this record.
So back to the present day, apart from this Earthmen project, what else are you guys working on musically? I know, Scott, you've done some beautiful stuff with Summer Cats and with Bart and Friends in relatively recent years. What are you doing musically at the moment?
There is still a Bart and Friends record to record. We recorded about a year ago. So it hasn't been mixed yet. I've been involved in a project called Tangible Excitement, which is a sort of me, Stuart from Boy Racer, Mark Manone, and a sort of travelling cast of people who are involved. So we've had sort of people from Gold Bears and Ultimate Painting, Veronica Falls sort of members and stuff, just doing some funny releases. So we've just had a 7-inch come out last week. So that's pretty funny. I think that's the only thing. Yeah, but it's pretty funny. It's amazing. I couldn't have ever imagined that I would have been friends in a band with Stu from Boy Racer, which is pretty exciting for me. And he's, it's just fun music to do. He sort of will come up with something, and we all record our parts separately in different parts of the world and stuff. That's probably the thing, I think. Yeah.
And Nick, you've had 4 solo albums, 3 of them with Popboomerang in recent years. What are you working on at the moment?
Well, Josh, another solo album. I'm fairly well into another record's worth of stuff. Got sort of 10 or so songs finished and another half a dozen working on.
And is that something that'll be seeing the light of day soon, or is it a bit down the track?
I'd hoped it would be this year, to keep up my regime of putting them out so close together, but it won't be. It'll be sometime next year, depending on who wants to do it. And yeah, in the meantime, Hamish and I have got a duo thing that we recorded a couple of years ago that looks like it's finally going to come out on rubber before the end of the year, I hope. But yeah, that won't involve any shows or anything. I don't think. That's just a recorded thing.
What are you going to call the band?
That's called Kings of Cough Syrup.
That's what.
I look forward to that, and I very much look forward to seeing the Earthmen play on the 12th of November at Bella Union. That's at the Trades Hall in Carlton.
We probably should say we're also playing a show in Sydney.
I didn't know that. Okay, well, sometimes people from Sydney listen to this program, so tell us about that one. When's that on?
December?
Second Friday, the 2nd of December at the Petersham Bowling Club. And it's with Knievel and Matt Tao.
Excellent. That should be good too. Scott, Nick, thanks very much for talking to me on It's a Jangle Out There.
Thank you so much, Josh, for having us.
Josh, thank you.